What's going on, everybody? It is that time again. The Sooners Illustrated podcast, episode 194 on this Wednesday, July 23rd, 2025. Josh Callaway, Collin Kennedy with you. 38 days until kickoff. We're into the 30s now. Fall camp starting next week. July on the back burner, on the back stretch, I should say. We're moving in, getting closer and closer. And I'm getting excited, Collin. I'm looking forward to his season's coming up, fall camp. You know, I'm for you, obviously, getting into the start of the high school season's coming up. It's feeling good right now. We're getting close. We're getting close. We're getting somewhere right now.
This is, like, no exaggeration, as desperate as I've been for football in my entire career. I'm not just saying that. When you put into context everything that has happened over the last 8-9 months, maybe even more, I genuinely feel the itch more than I ever have before. We're getting into the 30s, so that feels good. We're back to even numbers, and oh, by the way, I'm finally get to go on a vacation here in a little bit too. So we're getting to that part of the year that's really my favorite, where we're actually putting the pads on, and I can actually go head out and enjoy some time away with the family. So
100%, the right time for it. Like you said, fall camp coming up next week. And I do want to get Collin's thoughts on the start of fall camp. We'll do that later on in the show. Obviously CK and I, we haven't had a show, the two of us, since last Monday, and Collin is going to go on vacation next week, like he said. So we want to check in on some of the big name 2026 targets on the show today. Kind of go a little round table of the biggest ones, kind of hit them where things kind of stand. Obviously, before CK goes on vacation next week, and then we'll circle back, obviously, with him in a couple weeks and kind of reevaluate things then. But so some big updates on the show today, and we'll also look ahead, like I said, to the start of fall camp coming up next week, if you can believe it. Feels really good. Reminder again, subscribe at Oklahoma247sports.com. Promo code SoonersPod60. Put that promo code in right now. You get a 60% off subscription for a year at Sooners Illustrated 24/7 Sports. Phenomenal deal, obviously. That's just for the podcast listeners. You're not going to see that promo code on social media or on the website. It's just a nice little reward for our podcast listeners and viewers on YouTube. Sooners Pod 60. Listen to the show. You like what you hear, you go subscribe. Sooners Illustrated, Sooners Pod 60. So please do it. And I'll remind everyone at the end of the show as well. But we'll always make sure to get that in at the beginning. Phenomenal deal. Fall camp coming up. It's a perfect time and a phenomenal deal. Great value. Sooners Pod 60, all one word, promo code right now for a yearly subscription at 60% off at Sooners Illustrated and 24/7 Sports. So
I want to say shout out to the listeners and the viewers out there, because we really appreciate you guys for not only really diving into our content. Some of the shows we've been doing have been doing great behind the scenes, and you guys have been awesome supporting us as we gear up for the season ahead, both at Oklahoma and with all of its various targets on the recruiting trail. But we're getting to do this because of you guys. You guys have supported the show so much, and what Josh is doing, being like I always say, the consummate professional he is, on the pod, running the YouTube channel. This is the corporate mustaches saying, we see what's going on here. We see what Oklahoma fans are doing with this content. We want to reward them for listening, viewing, and interacting. So, folks, this deal, obviously, we want to get you guys access to the site and the entire 24/7 Sports Network, but it's also kind of our way of saying thank you for supporting the show. And I really wanted to get that in there because Josh does a great job. Our team here does a great job, but you guys have done great supporting us and supporting this. And because of that, we get to put this pretty cool deal together for all.
No doubt. Well said. Was really excited. I was told I still say Big 12 Media Days, SEC Media Days, that we were going to be doing this. And I was pumped up because, like you said, it's been a great summer. We're excited for fall camp and the season. So again, Sooners Pod 60, if you're not subscribed already, do it, put that promo code in. And obviously, again, I say it all the time, but you get access to all 24/7 Sports Network. You get to be a part of the community at Sooners Illustrated in all the VIP content we have, which there is a lot. And like I said, fall camp starting, so perfect time for it. All right.
And I do want to mention,
go ahead.
I did want to mention, too, just kind of a programming note on that. I know I just said I'm going on vacation next week. I will not be on the show next week, but I do still plan to be rolling out some content, even though I'm out. I'm going to schedule some articles for the folks who do sign up. So there's going to be content coming from me on the recruiting trail and whatever else. I was just out of coaching convention too. So just because I'm hitting vacation doesn't mean new members aren't going to get their money's worth. You know what I mean? Sure. And then Tom, Josh, and James, Blake, the rest of the crew going to kill it whenever we get going here in a second with fall camp. Personnel symposium for me will be right after vacation. That content's going to come to the side as well. So just want to get that off the top. You sign up. I'm going to still have some stuff for you, just like this show today and everyone else on our team at Sooners Illustrated and 24/7 Sports. I was talking to some of our national team over the last couple of days too, Josh. They're gearing up to contribute to the site here in a second as well. So excited to get that going and excited to have that as part of this deal too.
No doubt. And you know, like you said, you know, it's a yearly subscription as well. So it covers you for the entire season, the entire spring, and obviously the majority of next summer as well if you sign up right now. So great time for it. And hopefully everyone jumps aboard with us. Now, okay, without further delay, let's get into it. We got some good stuff to get into here in the 2026 class. Obviously, summer's starting to wind down. Still obviously several months from signing day, but when you start to get into the season, so you start to kind of, you know, and you're starting to really have the 26 class kind of set a little bit. There's some big updates we want to get into. Let's first start, before we get into some of the big targets that are still hanging out there in 26. I want to make sure to get your thoughts on Daniel Odom. This happened the back end of last week. Obviously, if you've been subscribed to Sooners Illustrated or listening to this show, you've known for a while that things sounded pretty positive here for Oklahoma. But he reaffirmed it last week. He put it in stone, in writing, that he is sticking with his commitment to Oklahoma. Now, obviously, Odom's been committed since January. The St. John Bosco wideout from California. We talk all the time. He's a 4-star prospect, a really high-end wide receiver in 2026. At one time, believed to be tied to Jaden O'Neal. Those guys were close. Obviously, O'Neal, everyone knows what happened there. He's no longer here. He's at Florida State. There was a thought Odom's probably going to also decommit, maybe follow him. But as things kind of went on, it sounded like, okay, maybe they have a chance to keep him. And now, sure enough, you know, back into last week, he announces, I'm sticking with Oklahoma. Collin, I mean, obviously a big deal. I mean, he's one of the higher rated guys in the class, period. He's the one receiver right now. I mean, this is a guy that, you know, just first off, he's just good. But then also, I mean, one of your better offensive guys to go with Bo Bentley in that wide receiver room. Big win here for Oklahoma, right? To keep Daniel Odom around. And even though they, you know, switched quarterbacks and everything else that's changed, they found a way to do it here. Nice win for Emmett Jones in Oklahoma to keep Daniel in the class despite, you know, the quarterback change and everything else.
Almost feels like adding another commitment at this point,
it
right?
Does.
Especially considering the context of this 2026 class. Getting Daniel Odom to shut things down is as big of a win as a new addition would be. And why I say that, coming out of the official visit, we reported at Sooners Illustrated for our VIP members that, like, there was belief in Norman that they were going to be able to hold on to Daniel Odom's pledge. And that had not always necessarily been the sentiment, at least for a few months before that OV. Coming out of the trip, even with Jaden O'Neal having decommitted, Daniel Odom got to spend time with Bo Bentley during his OV on the June 20th weekend. We were told that really helped Oklahoma's odds of keeping him around because Bo and Odom hit it off. And obviously it's hard to replace something like a childhood friendship, but Bo Bentley is Bo Bentley and Daniel Odom is a sensible guy. And I think when he realized that potential partnership with Bo was going to be potentially very good for him,
sure,
that reinforced everything else he already knew about Oklahoma, if that makes sense. He's a big fan of Emmett Jones. He's gotten to know Ben Arbuckle. Everything that the OU program, Brent Venables as a head coach, stands for aligns with Daniel Odom. However, coming out of it over the past couple of weeks, we'll say Florida State, who for a number of reasons, as we've talked about in the past, the Seminoles were a presence here. Washington, who at one point really felt good about potentially flipping Odom before he took that OV in Norman. And then Colorado started to pop up, and hey, Colorado pops up for like a Jaden O'Neal back then. They pop up for a Daniel Odom now. That's going to get your attention, right? And so it was one of those things where discussions were starting to be had. Was he going to take visits in the fall to other schools and let things play out on the field for Oklahoma, which, as we've talked about here on the show a number of times, is kind of what several recruits are thinking right now.
Sure.
But Odom reinforces his decision. He shuts it down publicly, and he said it's one of the toughest decisions he's had to make because of everything that's gone on or could go on in the coming months. But in the end, man, Oklahoma getting one of its best committed players to stick, a guy that hadn't necessarily been a guarantee to sign in December. Now it feels like that's the case. And again, it feels like a massive win, even though he's been around for a while.
I mean, really, I remember us talking on the show, a few months ago, whenever that was, whenever the class was still very small. And we were like, they only have X number of commits. It was a low number. And two of them are really in paper only. And we were referring to O'Neal and Odom because at that time, it really felt like, I don't want to say a long shot. I don't want to, overstate it, but, it didn't feel great. I mean, again, he was committed, but it was always kind of like, with Jaden, feeling like he's probably going to move on because they're all in on Bo Bentley. Like, it just kind of felt that it was at least partially unlikely or going to be tough to keep him. So the fact that O'Neal leaves and they go to Bentley instead and they find a way to do it, just nicely done. And again, it's not going to move the needle that much because he's being committed. And so I don't know if we're going to be able to fully appreciate what it means, but this is a good player, obviously, and from a great program in California, obviously in St. John Bosco. And so, big win here. I mean, big win, really, for Emmett Jones in Oklahoma to keep him around. So some good news last week, which is welcome, certainly, for Oklahoma. Would have been a bit of a blow, to say the least, if they had not been able to keep him, and they did. So nicely done.
I mean, I should say if they did lose him, definitely fair to say it would have been even more than a bit of a blow considering where things are on the recruiting trail. And that's the thing for me is important within the context of the class to get this thing locked down because life looks a lot different if Odom does leave because a guy we're getting ready to talk about is one of, if not the only receiver remaining on the board in 26. Odom exits, and all of a sudden Oklahoma would have been in a pretty interesting situation, to say the least. So I think getting Odom to shut it down alone is obviously a big deal, but that's what I think is very important to understand too, and why it feels like adding another commitment. Because if they had lost him, Davian Groce would still be there, but man, considering everything else that's happened to this point, you would have had to either really start entertaining the idea of pulling off a difficult flip, or we're really ramping up senior eval season. And I don't know what that would have looked like, but with this move, we don't necessarily have to. And that's just huge, man.
No doubt. And segueing nicely to Groce, because again, Odom, I mentioned it, off the top, the only receiver committed right now in the class. So again, just from that alone, it's good to keep him around. I mean, just in case, we'll see how the rest of this shakes out. You mentioned it. Let's go right over to him. Davian Groce, first target I want to get into. This is a guy that we talked about a lot. His name has come up many, many times. It's felt like it's been winding down with him for a while. Like it's been like a few weeks of kind of it could happen soon. We're now into the back end of July. Obviously, it still feels that way, right? That this could happen soon. Where are things at with him? And you have talked a lot about on the show about the moving pieces around him, other receiver targets that are out there. Obviously, we talk about Jordan Clay, guys like that. How have things kind of shifted around Davian Groce at other places, and kind of where are you seeing this at right now with Oklahoma and Groce? Because obviously you bring him in to go with Odom and in that wide receiver class. All of a sudden you're feeling very good about it. Whereas if you don't get him, you're kind of like, okay, good thing we kept Odom at least. But where are things overall here with Groce, obviously out there at Lone Star?
So I just mentioned it a little bit, but was out at THSCA's coaching school convention, which is one of, if not the largest high school coaching convention in the country. And a number of college staffs come down as well. And lo and behold, a guy everyone was asking me about, and I talked to several folks out there about, was Davian Groce. And then driving back while still very much in recovery mode from those days out there, a couple of key things happened. Number one, obviously, I had some sources, some folks out there around this recruitment call me. We were talking, swapping info, what we knew, what we didn't know. And then I think another thing that you kind of have to start off with is exactly what I'd been talking about in the past, now very relevant today, which is 4-star wide receiver Chase Campbell has committed to Texas Tech. And why that is important, if you've just now happened into this situation, Chase Campbell is and was one of the top remaining options on Baylor's board at the receiver position. He was choosing between Texas Tech, Baylor, and Kansas State. Baylor really wanted him. The Bears had invested a lot into that recruitment, but in the end, it's Texas Tech that wins out. And we here believed, for good reason, and this sentiment was echoed through a few phone calls that I was on driving back, we believed that whenever Chase Campbell made his decision, that was directly going to influence the way Baylor handled Davian Groce's recruitment.
Sure.
So now that that's come to some sort of resolution, I do believe that Baylor is only going to continue to ramp up pursuit of Davian Groce, now especially knowing that he's kind of their only priority target at receiver remaining on the board. And Baylor's goal in this class is to put together one of its best receiver hauls that the program has seen in a while. They have Jordan Clay, they have London Smith, Davian Peters, if I remember correctly, really good group, but they see Groce as kind of that final piece, and they were willing to do whatever it took to go get him, even if Chase Campbell wanted to commit to the class as well. However, now he's headed to Lubbock, and Baylor's going to do whatever they can over the next week and a half, I would say, to try to get him to come to Waco. Now, on the Oklahoma side, I think OU has felt really good about where it sits. I think that the Oklahoma staff has continued to get the sense that Groce feels good about that situation in Norman. And at one point or another, it really did feel like, hey, man, this thing could be any day now. And if that is the case, that's what Oklahoma would want. I still believe that's true because, as we know, Josh, now that Chase Campbell's off the board, the longer this goes, that only gives Baylor more time to go after Groce. And talking to some folks the other day, I really do believe that Groce is a little bit torn. I think Baylor has as good of a shot as Oklahoma to get this thing figured out in the end. I don't think that either staff necessarily has a 100% read on where Groce is, but I think that's intentional because I do think that Groce has a lot of admiration for both programs and both staffs. And so it's hard for me to say what I would pick if I were asked to give a leader, because I have felt like Oklahoma has held a lead for a little bit. From what I've heard, I think that Baylor has really started to cover some ground and only plans to continue to do so now that they know Chase Campbell is headed in a different direction. They have tunnel vision on Davian Groce. So does Oklahoma. I would be shocked if this timeline goes into August, Josh, but man, at this point, you kind of have to understand anything goes because that's been evidenced in the past with Davian Groce, right? So Oklahoma's done a great job. We're kind of entering what feels like the final stages where Baylor takes its last shot. And I do think that Groce is going to be receptive to that message. I think Oklahoma is prepared to counterpunch, and we'll see what happens at the end of this all.
So let me ask you, where does that leave Oklahoma if they don't get Groce? I mean, is it going to just be the fact that, well, I guess we're signing one receiver after we just signed two the previous year? Or is there time to pivot to other guys and try to maybe get some flips on guy or whatever? I mean, is it kind of all or nothing on Groce? I mean, because again, it would seem to me from someone, outside of it, compared to you, obviously, that when you just sign two and only have one, you kind of need this guy to kind of build up that receiver room. Where does it leave Oklahoma if they don't? Is there a pivot? Is there even
one? I think that in the event they were to lose out on Groce, I think the natural preference would be to really start to hone back in on a couple of guys that Oklahoma missed out on previously that they did like a lot on the board.
Sure.
And I think the hope would be, okay, whether it's, and I'm just throwing out some hypotheticals here, maybe a Jaden Pettit who committed to Wisconsin,
right?
Maybe like a Dallas Dickerson who might end up being very realistic as a flip candidate who's currently committed to Kentucky, or even Groce himself. I mean, we can't rule out the possibility of anything because I do feel as though Baylor and Oklahoma both kind of enter this season in a similar situation from a program setup standpoint, if that makes sense. So, yeah, I think that, again, the natural preference in that instance would be we know who we like in this cycle a lot, this being Oklahoma speaking, in theory. We know who we like. We like them for a reason. We went after them for a reason. Maybe they didn't commit to us more so because they didn't know who we were. We know who they are. We know who we feel they can be with us. Let's show them what they can be this upcoming season. If they're receptive to that, then we've got a shot to go get some guys we like. So in my opinion, that would kind of be the course of action. Now, I certainly can't rule out some senior eval types, or maybe even circling back on a couple of other names. You know, there are receivers out there who I personally believe make sense for Oklahoma that maybe OU just wasn't really all that involved with. And if they do like what they see on the senior tape, then Oklahoma's well within its right to look into those guys. And I would encourage that because, heck, Josh, like, the Chase Campbell guy's pretty good, you know? That's a one for instance. And you could go down a whole rabbit hole of other names. And so
no doubt,
that's kind of how I see it. Now, I'll close this by saying Oklahoma obviously hopes that doesn't have to be a discussion. Right. And they would really prefer to go get Groce and then just, you know, be set. Maybe pull off a flip closer to December if possible, and they get the sense that that's realistic. But again, I don't think that anyone's going to know with 100% certainty until we get that word from Groce, and then the reactions that take place can be planned out accordingly. So it's very interesting. This recruitment has been a lot more hectic than I anticipated, I guess. Because Davian's just like such a good kid. His family's awesome, but they're taking their time. They're being patient with it.
Sure.
They're trying to let the process play out, do what's best for them. And I don't think anyone can blame them for that. So I'm excited to see what they do. And I'll be honest with you, on the note of your question, I'm excited to see what Oklahoma does after that, because if it does open up what we're talking about, then there's any number of possibilities that could play out. And we would all kind of learn together if Groce were to go commit to Baylor.
Absolutely. Going to be interesting. Like you said, it's been a fun one to follow, and the dominoes around him with other guys has been really interesting to keep up with. And so head over to Sooners Illustrated, subscribe, use that promo code. Collin's been all over this one from the start, and we'll see. I mean, like, we've kind of thought we're getting toward the end of it for a while. Still feels that way. We'll see. Obviously, if we can get a decision soon from Groce, and if it's Oklahoma, that'd be a big one for them to go with Odom in that 26th receiver class for Emmett Jones.
Well, watch Davian commit to Oklahoma next week when Blake is on the pod in my place, and suddenly everyone is lobbying for me to be gone, with Blake being the good luck charm. That's suddenly come into my mind, and I now realize my job is on the line with Davian Groce's decision. So, Davian, if you're listening, understand the repercussions. My wife needs Christmas gifts in December.
Yeah.
So,
could happen. Let's flip over to defense. Let's talk about some defensive guys. Let's start with Elijah Golden, 26, 4-star defensive lineman, an elite prospect, top 115 player in the class for us, period, at 24/7 Sports. I don't think he's a guy we've talked about that much on the show. He's going to make his commitment here in a couple of weeks. August 9th is when he's going to announce. He's going to do it on 24/7 Sports YouTube channel as well. He's between Alabama, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, and Virginia Tech, the Florida prospect here at Cardinal Mooney High School. Collin, again, he's going to make his decision August 9th on 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. So we'll talk again, doing some calendar math. I think we're going to talk again before then, before he actually makes a decision. But kind of checking in here on Golden, because again, it's not a guy we've talked about really much at all. Where does Oklahoma sit here? Because this is a guy, again, a top 115 player, a high-end defensive line talent out of the state of Florida. This is suddenly a huge name prospect that Oklahoma is in the mix for, it would seem. Should OU fans get excited here, or what's realistic for Oklahoma a couple weeks out from decision day? They're in the Final Four, but do they have a real shot?
Yeah, not a guy we've talked about a ton here on the show, and I'll explain further the reasons why in a sense, but last week was really where it registered for me, like, man, we should probably go ahead and address this because our VIP members, Sooners Pod 60 is the promo code, right?
Yes.
National analyst Tom Loy hops on our board last week, puts a note up about Elijah Golden pushing his decision date back. I believe he was previously scheduled for July 26th. Now, like you mentioned, off to August the 9th. And Tom followed up on our board and said something to the effect of, Oklahoma may not be getting discussed here a ton, but make no mistake, OU is pressing behind the scenes. And we had heard similar, but Tom shares on the board. And again, it registered for me because our subscribers filled that thread up a little bit more than I was anticipating. A lot of fans do have a lot of interest in this one, despite what the situation had been perceived to be in the past. And so Here's why I say that. I think Oklahoma has been a contender here for a while. They had Elijah Golden on campus for an official visit. I want to say the June 6th weekend, if I remember correctly, one of the first OV weekends of the summer. We talked about him a little bit back then, but again, it was one of those things where, and even into the current state, the belief had been that Notre Dame was at the top and that Alabama was seen as a serious contender as well. That kind of, in theory, made up the top two, but that Oklahoma was very much interested. And I remember in the past, people telling me like, hey, Elijah Golden, Oklahoma, had some sources out in Florida tell me that this could be a thing. It could move quick, and it did. So this one's always kind of been, I guess, unique in a sense from the Oklahoma side in its involvement with Golden, while, again, the likes of a Notre Dame and Alabama, a little bit more clear cut. So I think what helps Oklahoma a ton is obviously Golden moving his decision back. If the commitment were happening in 3 days, that would be less than ideal. But because there's been more time given, Oklahoma is going to continue to do what it has been doing now for a little bit behind the scenes, and that's ramp up pursuit of Golden in hopes of reaching kind of the same tier level as a Notre Dame or an Alabama. Now, I know Notre Dame still feels very good, even though they were obviously seemingly in position to be the choice on the 26th. So I don't think the Fighting Irish love the fact that, we're going to get this guy in theory, and now he's pushing it back. Maybe we still get him. I don't know.
Right.
And then there's Alabama, and Alabama's Alabama. I don't need to expand much on that front. So Oklahoma is, in a sense, kind of trying to, like we were talking about with Groce in relation to Baylor, take that final shot, cover that last amount of ground, and see if you can overtake a recruitment before the final call is made. And Golden is another who he was getting ready to gear up, make the call, and all of a sudden the pause button was hit, and it's opened up a little bit of unmarked territory. So OU hopes that's a good thing. It's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. I'm going to be working with Tom Loy closely on this recruitment specifically as we gear up for that decision. And your math does serve you well. I believe I'll be back on the podcast just before Golden makes the call. So I'm excited to talk about it then, because I think we're in the early stages of that final push, and Oklahoma is really hoping to make this one interesting.
Yeah, it would certainly be a heck of a move, a late move on Golden if they were to find a way to do it. Pair him with Brian Harris, in that 26 D tackle crop for Todd Bates. And like Collin said, decision August 9th. It's going to be on 24/7 Sports, but we will have obviously a couple of shows before then, but with Collin right before then. So we'll have another opportunity to kind of check in here before he makes a call, of kind of seeing how things feel leading into it. So we'll certainly do that in a couple of weeks. But big one to circle on the calendar, August 9th for Oklahoma fans on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. He's going to make a call. And if Oklahoma can do the right things the next couple of weeks, that could be a really big splash for Oklahoma right the early part of August there. So a name to keep in mind, a name to keep up with over obviously at our site, Sooners Illustrated, but also just 24/7 Sports National, like Collin said. Tom Loy's been all over that one for us. So a big one there to keep an eye on.
And I wanted to mention on the back end, on the note of defensive tackles, Oklahoma involved with Golden. Oklahoma is still hovering for Teron Richardson, even though OU that's another one where Oklahoma's maybe in the top 2 to 3, and OU's hoping to make things interesting with that one. Teron Richardson is expected to potentially make a decision later in August, so there's time on that front. I would say that in reaction to Golden's decision, start thinking about Teron Richardson. And then I do want to mention, I'm going to butcher the name, but I apologize. I'll say this. So it's T.I. Umukai. I'm not going to try and pronounce the full names, but T.I. is a defensive tackle as well, who's going to be making his decision on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Oklahoma is a finalist there, so feel free to tune into that one as well. That being said, I don't expect Oklahoma to be the choice there. I think Oklahoma a little bit more focused on Golden rather than T.I. So wanted to bring up a couple other defensive tackle names, just because I'm sure, just like you did with Groce, folks would be asking, well, who are the other defensive tackles? Just a couple names to keep in mind as well.
No doubt. Great call there. So some big names to keep an eye on. And Golden, again, August 9th. And we'll be able to talk before then on that decision coming up here in the early part of next month. One other big name I want to make sure we get into as well. We've talked about him a lot and for good reason. Of course, is Jake Kreul, the 4-star edge rusher, top 50 player in the composite. Certainly one of the best edge rushers in the class. A big name guy that we talked about several times there at IMG in Florida. Obviously, Collin, we talked about, whenever that was, a week or two ago, when he set Oklahoma, Ole Miss, and Texas as his top 3. For you, where do things kind of sit here with Kreul? And is there any sort of a timeline on Kreul either? We've talked about him potentially going into the season a bit. Is that still where you kind of sit? And the latest with Kreul, this is, we talked about it, the last several months. After Bo Bentley, the next guy from like a priority perspective kind of was Kreul. One of those kind of next level guys, at edge rusher for Miguel Chavis in this 26 class. A little temperature check here, because this is obviously a big name that we want to make sure we're on top of at Sooners Illustrated and 24/7 Sports.
Yeah, so I've talked about this dynamic a little bit in the past. I'll kind of circle back to it, but then build off of this. So it's Ole Miss, Texas, Oklahoma, as Josh mentioned, in the top 3. Ole Miss candidacy, we've been fascinated by that because I've been talking with some folks behind the scenes, and I'm not saying this is definitely the case. I'm just saying podcasting conversation stuff. Many have wondered if Ole Miss, especially after Ole Miss went out and got the likes of Landon Barnes from Duncanville, the defensive end there, who's a 4-star talent in the top 247, really good football player. Many have wondered if Ole Miss is now willing to invest into the high school ranks as much as it has with the transfer portal in relation specifically to defensive line. We know Ole Miss is far and away one of the best at closing on high-profile portal defensive linemen. But as we know, that's expensive. And now it's like, okay, is Ole Miss, with as much pressure as it's been putting on Kreul's recruitment, starting to kind of take that approach with Barnes, Kreul, and the like, instead of a Walter Nolan, a Princely Uman and Jared Ivey, all those guys that they had gotten as transfers previously, if that dynamic makes any sense. That being said, we've also talked about how Texas is Texas right now. I mean, any high-profile recruit is willing to hear the Longhorns out, considering what that program is being built out to be and already is. And then there's Oklahoma, who has prioritized Kreul and emphasized Kreul longer than really anybody. I personally believe that if I had to tier it right now, and I'll be diving into this recruitment and all the others we're talking about here on the show a little bit more on the VIP board, I would still say that it's Oklahoma, Texas, Ole Miss in that order. That being said, I do think that it's now kind of becoming more of like the tier 1 and tier 2 rather than 1, 2, 3. So it really does come down to, Josh, what is Texas's plan? Because in the past, there has been some debate on how willing Texas has been to prioritize Kreul, especially compared to an Oklahoma, a Florida before the Gators got cut out,
right,
and a few others who made Kreul a priority while Texas sorted through a number of other edge options. And I've talked about it in the past. I won't dive into the whole dynamic again. Texas is recruiting Kreul. We believe it's starting to be a little bit more compared to the past efforts. But Texas is also still very much kind of like we were talking about with Oklahoma and receivers. Texas has missed out on a couple of its favorite edge targets in the cycle. But I can tell you, I've spoken with sources who firmly believe that Texas is also still under the assumption it's going to have a chance to potentially flip some of those guys in their favor, even though they missed out on them previously. Now, that's obviously a wait and see thing, but we're in a wait and see mode here with Kreul in Texas as well. What I can tell you 100% is that Oklahoma is not changing the approach anytime soon, right? And so Oklahoma feels still really good. I just think that the Sooners and I think Ole Miss are both kind of eyeing Texas as everyone tries to figure out the exact candidacy of each program down the stretch. Now, on the decision thing, I personally believe that Kreul eyeing the fall is intentional. We have talked about on the board, we've talked about here on the show, I want to say, something that everyone has kind of learned together is that Kreul is a very detail-oriented and information-based individual. He likes answers to his questions. He asks a lot of questions, and he does a lot of research. And I think that, in a way, he wants to do even further research in the fall. I think that Kreul welcomes the idea of letting games play out on the field, getting more tape on these programs, and learning a little bit more about them and their defensive lines and their outlooks as the 2025 season takes place. And we've mentioned October. Sure, it could be September. I just feel like, and this is me spitballing with an educated guess kind of thing, the October stuff has been brought up in the past for a good reason. So I'm going to still operate under that assumption. I think that Oklahoma, Texas, and Ole Miss are all prepared to take this one into the fall. And I think, if I'm honest with you, I think all three welcome that, because I think all three feel good about the teams they're getting ready to field going into this season, right? Especially on the defensive lines. So it's interesting. This is not the last time we're going to be talking about Jake Kreul or even the same dynamic, but that's the way that I see it right now. And I think that the key update as of today that's going to be explained a little bit further over the coming weeks is what exactly does Texas do, or how do the Longhorns emerge with Oklahoma still obviously seen as the primary threat and Ole Miss almost kind of the sleeper. Texas was the unknown commodity, and now all three are trying to kind of iron out their approach.
It's going to be interesting. Obviously, it's a huge name. It's like a target we've talked a lot about, and we'll continue to talk about, like Collin said. And it just kind of reinforces me talk about going into the season thing, how much Oklahoma playing well this season would help them quite a bit, right? I mean, that's the main thing working against them. You just had a rough year. It's a lot of unknown, the future of the staff, all that stuff that we've talked about many times. You go win some games, it can do a lot for you. And Certainly, I think Jay Kreul falls into that category. And these three guys we just talked about too, Kreul, Golden, and Groce. You talk about, I mean, these are three guys. I know that this class has been heavily dissected, and we talked about it, last week. Should Oklahoma fans be worried about the class, all that stuff? These are three guys that if you were to go 3 for 3, and I know that that's, asking a lot, but if you did, you're talking a 20 to 25 spot jump in the rankings on three guys. Like that's the level that these three players are, if you were to get them, right? And obviously context there with everything else that shifts around, but gives you an idea. These are three high-end players Oklahoma feels good about, at least, in position and try and be in position on all three. So big names here. We'll continue to monitor all of them, obviously.
Yeah, so we've mentioned in the past, I mean, even just Groce and Kreul alone kind of gets you hovering around the same place you were last cycle. I think Oklahoma welcomes it. And I think, again, it's important to remind the folks out there as we talk through all these 2026s, Oklahoma, the fan base, the media, I think everyone in the Oklahoma sphere is navigating this cycle with both the transfer portal and the 2027 cycle in mind. So, again, always important to bring that up. The last thing I wanted to say, Josh, before we get out of the recruiting stuff, because it is important to add very quickly, Oklahoma did send out a new offer in 2026. So Jacob Curry is a linebacker committed to Northwestern, 6'1", 200 pounds, out of Nice, which is, if you remember correctly, the high school that Tim Tebow is from. So a little throwback. But Florida guy, it's interesting that Oklahoma's sending out a new offer at the linebacker position. But, this is a linebacker-centric staff. It makes sense to a degree. However, Oklahoma did kind of back off on a few of its linebacker options in the past. And so I find it interesting that almost in a way, OU is replacing Braxton Lindsey as like a remaining target. Lindsey commits to BYU. Oklahoma now chooses to make a move on Jacob Curry. And I want to let the folks out there know, I got a text from someone I trust out in Florida the moment this offer went through, and they said, hey, saw this guy at a couple of camps. He's really solid. So folks out there in Florida like him. I say it a decent amount. Flips are expensive. That's kind of the saying. Flips are expensive. But if you're going to flip somebody, and this is no shade, probably helps that a logo like Northwestern's is there rather than like a Florida or whoever else being attached to it, right? That's just being realistic. We'll see how this goes. I'm hoping to talk with Jacob a little bit soon and work all of that out. I bet you we potentially have an update for you with Blake hopping on the show next week. So maybe we'll dive into Jacob Curry's recruitment a little bit further for that one. I know Blake wrote up a story about Jacob last night, so folks go check that out. And then, again, just felt it was worth mentioning, like, hey, brand new guy on the scene, 2026 linebacker Jacob Curry. We'll be checking him out moving forward.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. Good note there. Subscribe, Sooners Illustrated, Sooners Pod 60. Lots of content there. Like we said, still a lot of meat on the bone in 26. We're shifting to 27. Fall camp's coming up. So great time to do it. Sooners Pod 60 promo code right now. Before you go, like we said, Collin's going to be on vacation next week. Camp starts next week. And on Monday, James, Tom, myself will start to, preview fall camp a bit. We'll get into some of the storylines we're going to be watching for, certainly, as Oklahoma will practice for the very first time later next week. We're not sure what the media access is going to look like just yet in terms of, will there be an open viewing? Will Venables meet with the media? Will we talk to any player? We don't know what that looks like. I mean, they've usually been pretty good about early in fall camp getting us out there and stuff like that. So keep an eye out for all sort of fall camp content coming next week. But CK, since you're going to be on vacation, I wanted to make sure to give you the chance, man. I mean, what are you watching for? I mean, you don't have to go, crazy in depth. I know there's a lot of things, but for you, I mean, whether it's a player or position, I mean, fall camp starts next week. What kind of intrigues you the most as this Oklahoma team is finally going to get out on the practice field, and we're going to get a chance to kind of really start to learn a bit, more about this team before the opener on August 30th. For you, fall camp, what's kind of the attention grabber for you?
Yeah, like Josh mentioned, the guys on Monday are going to be doing a whole bunch of in-depth stuff. I bet you even we get some of Blake's thoughts, as well as a guy who's potentially going to be contributing to coverage in the fall for us at Sooners Illustrated. And Blake's a student at Oklahoma. Obviously, Tom, Josh, and James will be out at practices. A lot of coverage coming, and that's why I'm very excited to go on vacation, because the fellas get to let me take a break finally. But yeah, I'm really excited about our fall camp coverage, and just for me, trying to bring something up that is going to be expanded on further, but maybe just more like the underrated stuff. For me, all I'm going to be asking about or curious to hear about behind the scenes, whatever else, is what question marks, specifically from a player standpoint, become answers in fall camp. And so curious for your thoughts on this, but like what comes to mind for me, there are so many guys just individually, because a lot of fall camp is talking about position groups, unit displays, how guys are looking, how groups are looking. But individually, there are so many guys entering fall camp with a lot on the line. And whether it's the receivers, I'm looking at guys like Ivan Carrion. I mean, has maybe been discussed like almost not at all this offseason after playing in the bowl game. Zion Kearney, is he going to take that step? Is he going to become an answer rather than a question in the fall? Josiah Martin, Keontae Lewis, Jermichael Carter, like a lot of guys that I'm not even saying are like, oh, they could high level of variance, guys that we just don't know a ton about, whether it's the receivers that I just brought up, a few others certainly worth mentioning, like a Zion Raggins. What is that going to be an answer? Is he still going to be a major question? Tight end. I think that 100%. The Caden Helms stuff that was brought up by Brent is a big deal.
First name he brought up when asked about the tight end room, Caden Helms.
I think you may be on mute. I'm not sure. But Caden Helms. Caden Helms is an interesting one for me. I think that I want to see if he's healthy. I want to see if he can finally contribute in the way that he's able to, because his ability as a receiver, I mean, he's got a ton of potential. We've just never been able to actually ask about him or make him a question because, look, he's been hurt. And so I thought the note from Brent on Caden Helms specifically is a big deal. The offensive lineman, which one of these individuals, like, is EPL going to be an answer? Because that changes everything. Is Jacob Sexton going to really find his footing? Guys like Logan Howland or Heath Ozida. I mean, Logan Howland was out for the spring. Does he really lock down left tackle? I mean, I'll even say this, something for me going into fall camp, who emerges as running back 2? I mean, is Xavier Robinson going to feed off of last year, or is that done? Javonte Barnes and Taylor Tatum, which one of those individuals is going to be an answer? And then defensively, kind of on a similar sense, like, hey man, Gentry Williams, like, let's go. I know he's been out there. I know he's been excited to get into fall camp. Now's the time. You know what I mean? I'm excited to see what he does, what exactly we get from him in fall camp. And in general, again, that's just kind of my sentiment, is individually almost like which one of these guys on Oklahoma's roster become an answer rather than a question.
100%. No, I'm definitely, like going back to what you said about the wide receiver room, especially, like, it's up for grabs. There's so many guys there that can step into a big role. It's there to be had. Other than Deion Burks, nobody's role is really any sort of solid or set, I would say. I mean, so it's up for grabs. Tight end too. And the fact that Brent brings up Caden Helms first up, we've heard good things about Carson Kent. Obviously, Will Huggins had a great spring. Jaron Kanik, who knows what to make of that? Like, especially offensively, a lot is just up for grabs for guys to go get it. Offensive line, running back too, like you said. I assume that'll probably be Javonte Barnes, but I don't know. So it's very, very interesting. There's a lot up for grabs, to say the least, offensively, and the same defensively as well. Gentry Williams, remaining healthy at the top of that cornerback room. he's ready. He's heard the narrative that he's heard all the time and all that stuff. Like there's a lot to be had, certainly on the defensive side as well. We lost Collin for a minute there. Now Collin's back.
I've got you back. We're good.
I was still showing levels that whole time, so I think I'm okay, but I don't know. Well, no, you might take some surgery on the show on the back end. If not,
no, you're good. We know that one of my computers here is a piece of junk, but luckily I hopped right back in, seemingly just in time, and now I've got you loud and clear. But
you're good.
Anyways, man, I can't wait though for fall camp. It's gonna be
me too. I'm excited. Excited to get out there. Excited to see John Mateer again and see Jay Knott for the first time. It feels good. And like I said, Tom, James, and myself will kind of dive into some of the top storylines of fall camp on Monday. We'll kind of set the table. And I believe first practice is Thursday the 31st. I don't know if that's confirmed or not. That's kind of been what I've been operating under.
That's what we were told. So we'll see if it follows through. But
yeah,
how it goes. How it goes with this stuff.
Right. So I don't know, again, when we'll actually get to practice ourselves the first time or when, we'll talk to some players stuff. But I would imagine, I'd be shocked if we got through all of next week and weekend without something. So be on the lookout as soon as illustrated, and certainly on the YouTube channel here. If you're listening on the podcast feed, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're new to us this year, practice footage, all the press conferences, all the player interviews, loads of coverage on the YouTube channel throughout the season. And it really starts with fall camp. So you make sure you subscribe. You also turn on the notification thing so you get notified whenever a new video pops so you never will miss anything. Do that preferably if you can. And be sure to subscribe over as soon as illustrated the website as well for all the content, all the VIP content. We have a lot coming. A lot is there now, a lot more to come. We're right on the cusp of it. You can feel it like the next 5-6 months is where it gets good. So exciting times with fall camp starting next week for sure.
My wife looked at me. I was talking about something. I was talking about fall camp and all that. And she just looks at me yesterday and goes, "We're not going on vacation, are we?" And I said, "Well, once the pads start popping, we'll see how much, that itch that comes back up while we're hanging out in Nashville."
Have you started already looking at schedules, like high school football schedules? Are you mapping out your games?
Come on, man.
Oh yeah.
Come on, man. We were out there I was out there at coaching school, and whether it was talking to some of the college guys, but then obviously I'm out and hanging out with a ton of the high school coaches, and they were all going, "Hey, here's who we play this week. You got to come out for this one." Or, "Hey, we've got this scrimmage against so-and-so." I'll tell you this right now, as sicko mode as I am, I've already outlined 2 or 3 scrimmages, and I'm working on my practice schedule right now. I've got about 9 or 10 programs I know for sure I'm just going to a practice. So that's around the corner, and it's probably only a matter of time before I get too antsy for it. You know what I mean? I have a hard time sitting still as it is.
Yeah.
That first go around, when we see you put the clips of fall camp on the YouTube channel and I get out there I've already been told I'm going to a first practice at high school at 6 a.m.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah.
Gotta beat the heat. Gotta beat the heat.
Gotta beat the heat. And there's nothing like the dawn, the dew, the humidity, and the fellas come out with the pads. It's right around the corner, man. I'm too excited for it.
Can't wait. Carl Albert here in Oklahoma, obviously just down the road, usually has a big scrimmage in mid-August with usually 6 or 7 pretty big Oklahoma high schools get out there. I usually go already the itch for that, and it's the best. I love the early season when it's everyone thinks they're going to be good. Nobody knows, what I mean? It's just great vibes. It's we're getting there, man. It's about there. I love the summer. I'm not trying to wish away what's left of the summer, but I'm excited. I'm excited for football, and we're getting very, very close. Fall camp next week. It's awesome. It's awesome. Feels good. I think that's it for now. Again, Sooners Pod 60, I'm going to continue to pub that a lot so it's just ingrained in everyone's brain. Subscribe right now. Be back on Monday with Tom and James. Again, we're going to continue our position preview series. We'll also, like I said, preview the start of fall camp. Fall camp content coming next week. Collin will be on vacation. We are tentatively planning a recruiting show potentially with Blake and Koviak making his debut. So keep an eye out for that next week. Later in the week as well. We'll have more details on that hopefully by Monday. Again, we got fall camp schedule. Might have to kind of dance around, but we'll figure it all out. It's a good problem to have with football being back starting next week. That's it, man.
Moving pods around because there's football going on. Oh no.
Yeah.
What an awful problem we definitely haven't been waiting forever for. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Very excited to get it going next week, to say the least. And we're over Sooners Illustrated, so come hang with us. It's going to be a fun season. Certainly. We hope so. Hopefully a lot more fun than last year, to say the least. That's it for now. For Collin Kennedy, I'm Josh Callaway, signing off. We'll see you next time, right back here Monday. And as always, fall camp next week, right back here on Sooners Illustrated.